Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the weekly live stream for the Restitutor Orbis channel. I'm your host, Lucius Aurelian, and we are going to be looking at the very alluring and interesting topic of Moscow and the Urals. A year later, we finally return to Russia and the capital city of Moscow, and we're also going to take a look at the Urals. And I'd like to extend a heartfelt greeting to all viewers, all Prime Explorers, all Explorers, and all others joining us this evening. Hope you're all doing well, and I'm just going to give you the total greeting because we've got a lot to cover. And so what I wanted to start with, and just to give the full clarity of my background, I am not from Russia. I did not grow up in Russia, and I most certainly did not grow up in Russia when it was under the rule of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, or republics as it were. In any event, I'm going to do the best I can with the pronunciations, but feel free to poke fun at me, as you know I don't have any issue with it. And the first thing I want to bring to everyone's attention is this 1992 film, Back in the USSR. And this is an intriguing film, both from a historical perspective and a knowledge perspective, because this is technically the first American film that was filmed entirely on location in Moscow. 1992, it was after the technical end of the Cold War, or whatever you want to refer to that conflict or division of the land as. And this film starred Frank Whaley, a couple others, Roman Polanski, oddly enough. Yes, that Roman Polanski. He actually starred in the film. Wasn't really aware that he had acting chops, but in any event, I was also surprised that he traveled because of his legal problems. But less said about that, the better. It also has famous ham actor Brian Blessed in it. Anyways, I'm not necessarily recommending the film, at least on its own merits, but I am recommending that there's a lot of wonderful views that are taken in Moscow as the film is shot entirely on location. So if you watch it and maybe you don't care for the film, you can kind of low down the volume or mute it even, and then put some, whatever your favorite soundtrack is on the background, and then just enjoy it for all the views, because it does have some interesting views in it. And what is it really about Moscow that draws our attention? Well, this is probably one of the best views, and a question that I'll have for you all is Moscow in the continent of Europe, or is it in the continent of Asia? And I recall asking this question many days back when I was teaching. So what do y'all think? Moscow in Asia or Moscow in Europe? Let's see. Go ahead and start flinging those answers out, and it's okay. Remember, this is just the technical division of the land, so no big deal if you're not tracking it. It's okay. Oh, some are saying Asia. Huh. Ah, there you go, Sooner West. Yeah, it's definitely on that continent, isn't it? Oh, look, KC933, Eurasia. Yeah, I mean, because technically it is one continent, and that's probably the most correct answer I've ever seen. And Adam Bomb says Eurasia, too. Vaughn says Europe. Asia, Eurasia. Hello, Lori. Eurasia. Oh, Eastern Europe, yes. Well, of course, I am Kairos. We have an old world feast for the eyes. Chassis Nick says all the above. Well, I would agree with you all. I would say Eurasia myself. Technically, though, Moscow is in Europe. But don't ask anybody from Europe about that, because politically, Moscow is not affiliated with what is politically Europe today. But we're not concerned so much with that. So when we look at this initial image here, we can see that we have that classical composite image of Old World and New World architecture, and the differences are quite staggering. However, there are a couple questionable examples that we have in Moscow and the greater area that we're actually going to look at and talk about a little bit. Now, moving on from that, we'll head right into our first look, and I don't want to delay, and I want to get right into the Kremlin, because it's very, very intriguing, some of the things that we have to consider. Now, what does Kremlin mean? Does anybody know what the word Kremlin means? And here we have our little map of it that we're going to start, and we'll talk about some of our points of interest. Eat my Richard, the land of the Rus. Yes, very true. Europa. Yeah, the Latin terminology for Europe. Very good, Jamie, very good. No. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So does anybody know what Kremlin means? Ah, Anne-Marie Miller, fort. Yeah, you're not too far off. Not too far off at all. That's actually part of it. Short, it's a fortress. Hey, what's our real story? Thanks for joining us. So Kremlin, Russian word, means fortress within a city. It can also mean citadel. And while when people generically refer to the Kremlin, they're talking about the Moscow Kremlin, it should be noted that there are many Kremlins throughout Russia. There are many Kremlins, many fortress citadels or fortresses within a city. But the one we're specifically looking at is the Moscow Kremlin. And you may recall, and maybe you don't, maybe you didn't see the exploration from a year ago, and that's all right. The Kremlin is just that. It's what we would classify as a compound. Now, modern individuals and terminology call it a fortress complex, but it's a compound. Many buildings located within a wall. Yes, it seems like a defensible structure. And it has many unique towers with it as well. And some of the areas that we're going to look at very specifically, we're going to look at the Grand Kremlin Palace. And if you go to visit the Kremlin, you'll notice that they have several fine bathrooms, so it's already got a leg up on the plaza at Kansas City. I'll tell you what, I still can't believe they don't have any bathrooms there. But anyway, so there's plenty of bathrooms there. So, if you have that need, you're good if you go to the Kremlin. Now, just to be fair, these towers do have different names to them. These are sort of the translated names for the towers, if you will. And the main entry tower is the Trinity Tower, although it has a much different name in Russia. And then, of course, you have the many, many cathedrals that we've looked at. And then we'll take a closer look at both the Tsar Cannon and the Tsar Bell, because why wouldn't they be called the Tsar Cannon and the Tsar Bell? And on that note, who was actually responsible for building the Kremlin? Who was the Kremlin built for? What's the official history say? I'm just one of those guys who tries to do the best they can, and I lost my sunglasses a couple years ago, but I'm wearing the contacts now, so it's all good. I am Cairo, Star City, Citadel, Kremlin. Mind blown. Oh, yes. A star city within a star city. Quite complex, isn't it? Oh, yes, Jamie, what could be beneath it? We really don't know, do we? And so the layout is very intriguing, and a lot of people tend not to see the layout. There's not really a lot of imagery available of the layout. You just generally refer to the Kremlin, and it's kind of the same thing as saying the Capitol, the White House. It's basically where the center of government or the head of government for Russia, formerly the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, was. So there's your main entrance. You have the Grand Kremlin Palace, and that's where the government operates out of. But you've got all these citadels, all these cathedrals within the citadel. And then you have many other areas of interest. We looked at the armory chamber. That was quite intriguing on the original exploration. And this is the individual who's responsible for ordering the construction of the Kremlin, Ivan III of Russia, Tsar, also known as Ivan the Great, not to be confused with Ivan the Terrible. This is Ivan the Great. Not really going to make any commentary about this particular picture because it's an artistic rendering, but it is quite interesting. And of course they pulled it off by bringing in a couple guys from Italy in the 1480s when they constructed it. Yes, that's what the official history says. Two brilliant architects were brought in from Italy who decided to go and accept the Tsar's invitation to design and build the Kremlin because, well, what else would it be? Individual by the name of Solari and Ruffo, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. They're pictured right here, and I'm sure they're quite historically accurate individuals. I mean, look at the hair and the beards and the fact that they're pointing at things. That's all you got to do. You got to go out and point at things. Apparently they were giants too, or maybe this was just a scale model they built of the Kremlin before they built the full-scale thing. I don't know. All kinds of things you can interpret looking at these wonderful artistic renderings, right? That's right, Sky Sage. Logistics is no problem. Hey, Tartarian Prog Rocker, good to see you. You're looking at the very foundation of it, too. And so the story goes that these two individuals, we don't exactly know how they reached Moscow from Italy, but somehow they did. Maybe they just walked. It doesn't really matter. The official history says they went there, they designed it. Actually, they even built it. I guess they built it themselves with their bare hands. Well, so maybe they are giants. I don't know. It's really just funny when you look at the story. And both of them apparently passed away in Moscow. They never returned home to Italy. So it must have been quite a mission. I guess they're still remembered for it. So anyways, here we have the wondrous Tsar Bell. And we've looked at this before. I actually took a preeminent look at it when we did the exploration of St. Petersburg. Another one of these incredible bells, and yet the Tsar bell still has the broken piece that's right next to it. Extremely large, as you can see by the individual right here. What are your thoughts on this bell and its potential capabilities? What could it reflect? And what could it really be from? Halby belt, Italian giants, yeah, no doubt about it. Ah, Sky Sage, Daglak, yes. It was also a Panzer formation, too. The Bell formation. Anyways. Oh, look at that, Jamie. Yeah, I bet it was a 432. You know, I would really, really love to hear what it sounded like. Of course, we're never going to hear what it sounded like, but what did that bell sound like? How was it mounted? Where was it mounted? What tower? And what did it really sound like? And what kind of capability did it have? Hello, Luna. Thanks for joining us. Healing bells. Yeah, no doubt about it. And to what extent and what range did these healing bells have? That's a great question. Atom Bomb, it seems they broke all these bells so we can't redeem the vibrations. Yeah, I've kind of wondered that myself, Brother Adam. And there's probably a lot of evidence that supports that conclusion, doesn't it? Whether it was 432 or what. Yeah, I mean, I am Kairos rang at a healing or protective frequency, and maybe it had a way of amplifying other frequencies that had other uses. We got an exploration coming up very soon where we're going to take a very close look at that, what you can do with frequencies. Kathy says defense bells. Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, if frequency, amplitude, and cymatics had all the capabilities that we suspect they did, I mean, these bells had a tremendous amount of uses. And so, hey, Lady Deanne, I think it powered wireless energy. Yeah, there's a strong possibility with that too. And again, going back to the cymatics principle. So a lot of different possibilities with it. Jamie Griffin, demons hate them. Yeah, funny you mentioned that. That's going to come up in the exploration. We actually talk about that a little bit with the demons not really caring for bells. It was stated that she'd ring bells and it would keep the demons away. But, you know, it's just an old myth now, I guess. So, anyways. So the Great Bell, the Tsar Bell, that's one example. And here we do have a little bit of aerial footage of the overall Kremlin, the Citadel complex. And here you can see what it really looks like. And quite a stunning layout. And the original Kremlin complex, the walls, the towers built in the 1400s, the other structures within it built at different times. Although there may be a conflicting account on that, and I'm not going to go ahead and say, you know, I know what happened, I don't know what happened. I didn't personally witness it. It could have all happened just as they told us. But you're always struck by any kind of stunning beauty, and then also how they try to underplay the beauty when it comes to the Kremlin. Now, if you're someone from what's traditionally viewed as the West, the United States, of course, no one was going to tell you or show you that the Kremlin was a beautiful looking place, especially in the 1980s. I can't imagine why. But then you see some other images of it actually on the ground, and you get the idea for just how stunning, not just the architecture is, but the artistic layout of a lot of these structures. And you start to pay a lot of attention in terms of some of the detailing that we see, whether it's one of the defensive towers, whether it's one of the many cathedrals, or even St. Basil's Cathedral back here, which is technically not on the Kremlin, but don't worry, we're going to take a close look at that. And you really get an entirely different impression from what your initial expectations might be. And to be honest with all of you, my first exposure to really seeing Moscow firsthand was actually through that movie. And I'll admit I did not enjoy the plot of that movie, but that's just me. Maybe you'll enjoy the plot of the movie back in the USSR. But you will really get to see a lot of the beauty firsthand. It's really the closest thing you could do to doing an exploration without actually being on the ground in Moscow right now. And if somebody is watching and they're on the ground in Moscow, by all means, share your observations because it's a very stunning city. And there's many different elements to it. Well, it was built by Italians. Yeah, was it? It's funny that the official account says the Italians built it themselves, too. I guess they didn't need any help, did they? Ah, Sky Sage, Foundation Rock. No doubt about it. And a lot of different examples of Foundation Rock. Hey, Miss Honeybee, good to see you. Hope all's going well. And yeah, please share and subscribe. I appreciate that. Pete, the S-tone is the monolith. Oh, here we go again. Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you. Thank you. My bells are always swinging. Ah, indeed. Maybe. We don't know for sure. And when you look a little closer at the brick, you'll find that there's a lot of different dimensions to it. And I've got a little bit of a bad joke coming up here in a little bit with it. So, But there's plenty of other renderings of the Kremlin, and here you can see St. Basil's Cathedral is technically outside the Kremlin, and here you have the actual names for the towers, the Spasskaya Tower, and I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly either, the Troitskaya Tower, that's the main visitor's entrance that we looked at earlier, so we're looking at it from the other direction. Here you're actually seeing some of the original names from the USSR. For example, you have the Supreme Soviet, obviously it's not referred to that anymore. The Kremlin Palace, that's always been the same name. And so a couple drawings, oh, and there's the nice museum. And then, interestingly enough, Lenin's tomb is also located outside the Kremlin. So make of that what you will. And, of course, we're going to look at the mighty Tsar cannon. And one thing I'll point out on the Tsar cannon first, what do we have here? Where have we seen this before? Another lion fighting another snake? Well, that does it. This video is going to get bombarded by all the comments then, I'm sure. Just can't get away from it, can we? Is it an Italian cannon? I guess they all are. Why don't we say it's a Scottish cannon, you know? What's the one in Edinburgh named? Monsmeg? Yeah, maybe it's a version of that, right? Or maybe they actually designed theirs after the Tsar cannon. Who knows? Isn't that barrel too short relative to the caliber? Yeah, you think? Good point. Now, let's just think about this. How exactly would one go about transporting this thing? How much does this weigh? What would really be the intention behind it? Are you really going to use this to elevate this to knock down walls, or are you just trying to break through walls? If it has any military application. I mean, are the handles here just to carry it because, you know, people could just grab it and they could pick it up and carry it? A lot of interesting symbolism, though, when you look very closely at it. And so it has many different dimensions of interest. Lion or a hellhound? What do you think? And then just think on the logistics of transporting the ammunition. Goodness gracious. I wonder how long it's actually been sitting there. Now, thoughts on what this could really be, or do we just think it's a cannon, you know? And I'm open to all suggestions here. Oh, there you go, Jamie. Yeah, classic pop guns. That's a good one. Hello, Nora. Yeah, even the wheels have architecture. Great observation on that. Let's take a closer look at those wheels. Yeah, the craftsmanship, absolutely. And it's a good observation. I mean, we've got craftsmanship here in the wheels. Nora just called that out. We've got the lion or the hellhound on front, whatever you want to see it as. You've got the lion. Who knows, maybe it's missing some wings. Kidding, kidding. There's no wings that were removed. It looks like it's a lion fighting a snake. Again. Always fighting snakes. But then even on this so-called cannon. And then, I mean, look at this. Very intriguing. Clearly doesn't seem to be rifled on the inside. And no, like I said, I have not been to Moscow. I have not been to the Kremlin. I haven't seen this firsthand. I would love to. But again, it just creates more questions than it answers. You know, could it have been another piece of technology? Sooner West, I was just thinking that. Fire some type of frequencies? Yeah, maybe. And maybe it has no limited range. Well, that's just it, Albie. How could they move that? No idea. Unless there was some other means to move it. Yeah, I'm with Jackie. I mean, my impression, my theory is that it's not a weapon. It had some other use. You know, maybe some sort of centralized piece of technology, some central infrastructure that was essential for facilitating the technology for all we know. Hey, Sissy, yeah, that's what I was speculating is what are the handles for? Somebody just going to grab it and carry it? Yeah, it would take one heck of a horse. Quite a few horses at that. It does seem ceremonial, no doubt about it. Whatever its use was and whatever it was intended for, there does seem a ceremonial component to it. But it's kind of funny because if we think about the limitations of what we have in the official history, the ceremonial explanation doesn't hold water. I mean, maybe it does, but... Brett. Yeah, I mean, they look like handles. I don't know. So that, all kinds of questions about it. And Kathy, yeah, maybe that's what that picture was really showing. Maybe those guys were giants. I mean, what other explanation do we have at this point? You know, I mean, I don't directly take that in a lot of explorations, but it's always on the table. I mean, who knows? You can see why people would think that and why it would be a legitimate theory. So anyway, another one of these tremendous cannons, the Tsar cannon. And we'll go on to the next one. And here you've got this wonderful image of St. Basil's Cathedral parked out in front of the Kremlin. And of course, you can see some of the more modern architecture in the back, which is still relatively impressive. What amazes me about a lot of these images is just how many different dimensions of colors that you have with them. And then, of course, even on St. Basil's, and we'll take a closer look at it in a second, you can see some of the foundation stones. So limestone, some composite stone, some advanced geopolymer, who knows? But just for comparing and contrasting, we have the State Kremlin Palace. This was constructed in 1959 and 1961. And this looks like this could be any modern United States county courthouse that was built in the same time frame. It actually looks eerily almost just like one of those that I saw in Wisconsin that was constructed in the 1960s. Oh, look, you even got your little stairway there. So, yeah, we got a little modern architecture that managed to slip its way within the Kremlin as well because, nobody was beyond it. It's just very intriguing when you see the contrast in styles. But then you look at this other angle of the Kremlin and you see the Grand Kremlin Palace right here. And one of the many cathedrals. It's also funny when you look at some of the towers. There's a couple towers that are just called the no-name towers. So many interesting details with it. And like somebody said, who knows exactly what's under here? So very, very interesting site. A lot of dimensions to it. And yet in different angles, you can see, especially with the lighting, just how old it really is and how intricate it is at the same time. Yeah. There's always pictures, aren't there? They might prove something, they might not. Yep. But how modern is it? And what's more modern than what? Isn't that the question? So. And then another look at the imagery here. And what's interesting to me is probably about 15, 20 years ago, it was rather difficult to really locate a diagram like this of the Kremlin. And so I find these rather intriguing just because by virtue, you couldn't really find them not too long ago. And now they're readily available. So information's available to everyone about everything. Now here we have an older image. And oddly enough, you notice that it seems to be a little dirty, doesn't it? Now you could say, well, it's a black and white photograph from circa 1920s, although who knows for sure. But you look a little more closely and yeah, it does seem as though the outer wall looks older and dirtier, and even the palace looks older and dirtier. The cathedrals look older and dirtier. I mean, what we just looked at in the modern photos, it was pristine. So, result of a lot of renovation? What are your thoughts? Why is it once again we have one of these older photos that looks so much different? Inferno. Yeah, definitely looks over 500 years old, doesn't it? Ancient. Definitely agree with that. And really, I think that does back up the story. Now, the real question is it just the defensive fortifications that are that old, or are the rest of the structures much older than we'd like to believe? And you see something like this, it gives you different clues. Ooh, Vaughn, because it had just been taken, maybe. Yeah, that's entirely possible. Or founded, or whatever you want to say. But then you have this image from 1911, and official accounts say that the Tsar regime and then the subsequent Soviet regime ended up removing a lot of these buildings that were originally within the Kremlin compound, or the complex, or whatever you want to call it. So 1911, some very interesting images, though, on the horizon here. I mean, what's being concealed back here? Maybe nothing, but a lot of beauty. The towers are still there. And how many of these buildings were lost? So we don't just have to look at the old downtown of some U.S. city. We can see it here in Russia and Moscow. There were a lot of structures that are missing over time. Now, maybe it all holds water. Maybe there was damages with this particular structure and they had no choice but to tear it down. Who knows? There's many different explanations, and yet we tend to get the same explanations that are repeated time and time again. Sky Sage, yes. You don't need people. What are people for? We can just build buildings without people, right? Albie. Yeah, it's funny. They said a lot of people spoke French. In fact, they even said that they spoke French in Great Britain during a period of time because of the nobility. So who knows for sure? Stone fires. Yeah, that's a good one there. All right, well, let's take a look at something a little bit more dramatic. We're going to take a look at the Grand Kremlin Palace. Stand by here. And stop screen, share screen. And this is the Grand Kremlin Palace. Now, it might not look like it's the most elaborate from the exterior, but as always, there's a different story when we look at the interior. And of course, you recall the photo we just looked at. It looked very dirty and old, and here it looks much more clean and new. So maybe we need to also give Russia credit for keeping their old world structures quite clean. This is the architect behind it, and of course, since we don't have any kind of actual photo, just a sketch drawing, who's to know if they really existed? Although I remember when famous architect E. Townsend Mix, who appeared on the channel a lot, didn't have a photo, and then after I lamented it several explorations, a photo magically appeared. So maybe if this individual has a photo that appears, then we'll talk about his name, but I'm not going to focus on it right now. Anyway, he's the one who designed the Kremlin. And you'll never guess when this building was laid out and built, because what other century would it be? But when we look at the exterior, we see some interesting symbols, don't we? Oh, yeah. A little double-headed bird there. Does that have any relevance, or is that just classic Russian heraldry? Heraldry. I guess it's up to you to decide. Okay, enough of the exterior. Let's look at the interior. Now, don't worry, I have my usual assortment of different quality of images, but what are your thoughts looking at the interior of the Grand Kremlin Palace? Ah, Vaughn, order from chaos. RB, Putin on the Ritz. Yeah, no doubt. Oh, look at that, Sooner West recognizing that symbol. You don't say. Nah, that couldn't be. I mean, it looks exactly like it, but, you know, if we're assured it's not, then how could it be, right? Yeah. Well, just wait, Battlestar. We got some even better ones. Yeah, the glamour is something else, but wait until we look at some of the more pristine images of this. But yes, the symbolism in it does reflect something that we've seen before. There's no doubt about it. Here we've got an older image from the Tsar's family. Very interesting image, but you can still see some of the ornate detail in the pillars and the columns. And then, of course, the Tsar showing up. Horse-drawn carriage. Interesting symbols here, huh? But you look at the black and white photos and you really feel like you're missing something. So let's look at some more modern color photos. And voila. And then you really get an appreciation for just how unbelievably ornate and opulent. And I think these palaces in Russia definitely reflect those words more efficiently than any other place I can think of. Resonance is always key, isn't it? You know, I don't know, Texas Redneck Hippie. That's something I'd like to check out. Actually assess the quality of these materials. So, anyway. Oh, we're just getting started, Luna. We got plenty more to look at. Yeah, just the floor alone. Just the floor alone. Tsar, Tsar, Tar. Yeah, it all runs together, doesn't it? Or maybe it doesn't. Yeah, good old Mother Russia. And so they have the halls named after the Grand Orders of Russia. Grand Order of St. George. We'll get to that in a second. But I mean, look at the floor. And then here you can actually see that these pillars really do seem to have what appears to be gold on them. I don't know. I mean, I'm not I'm not familiar with what they say the construction materials are, but maybe if you go there with the historian or the museum tour guide, they'll tell you that it's not really gold. They just painted it gold because it's more expensive than real gold, to reflect that story from the Iowa State Capitol. I don't know, but I mean, you just look at this thing and it's just incredible everywhere you look. And again, fine geometric precision, ceilings, walls, all the way to the floor. And let's see, which particular hall are we on now? And this is the Order of St. George Hall. And I call it that because it's interesting to me. The St. George Hall, Russia's highest military award is the Medal of St. George. I think it's the Cross of St. George. And yet in the United States Army, if you're going to be inducted into the Honorable Order of St. George, that's if you were part of the Mounted Maneuver Forces or if you were in the branches of armor or cavalry. I'll anger some people. There's not really a branch called cavalry. It's a state of mind. But anyway, off of that, same thing though. Incredible detailing and decoration, ceiling, walls. I mean, look at each of these pillars and all the effort that went into this. And what are these construction materials? And don't want to overlook the elaborate chandeliers. I mean, when someone tells you this is a palace, this is clearly a palace. There's no mistaking it. Anne-Marie Miller on both sides, actually. Oh, yeah. True enough. Yeah. I mean, how many people could you fit in that hallway, Sooner West? No, I have not been there either. I would very much like to go. And so you can see why they name all the hallways, and you see the pattern in the floor. Is it some kind of advanced marble, some sort of polished granite, something else beyond that? Same thing here with having the columns that are integrated in the walls. Then they go up to different columns. All this detail, and of course, no shortage of numerous arches. Arches on this balcony here, and then arches down on the ground floor. Incredible doors, too. And you have to wonder what kind of detail that we're missing, not really being able to see all this in person. And really experience what it's like actually being in the structure, or just how your voice carries if you're talking here in the hall. I mean, these are all the things I would like to find out in person by going there. Don't worry, Dallas. We're going to get to the Urals. And believe me, we could probably spend a couple whole explorations doing it, so. First and best dressed. Yeah, no doubt about it, Vaughn. But whenever we call something a palace, I mean, this is something that we really think about. And here you get an idea for a bit of the size and just the overall layout. And we've certainly seen this kind of construction before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 chandeliers that we've got right in our view. And again, we have this symbol right here. And different devices here on the indentations in the ceiling. But I mean, even the chandeliers have a little bit of a device on the base, what they're hanging from. So very, very impressive. How do they keep this so clean, I wonder? And we got the little cross over here. And why not? Because you haven't seen enough opulence yet. Will completely blow your mind. Here's a better look at this particular hall with our favorite symbol that we see all the time. Ooh, 432 hertz devices. Yeah, maybe. LA, put together a trip to Russia. I'm sure you could muster a group to go. Yeah, I'm sure I could muster a group to go, although I have to wonder, what sort of response would that kick up? Might be interesting just to find out, wouldn't it? Ooh, sovereign, invisible, and traceable. How are the chandeliers powered? Good question. I'll have to look into that. Is it a modern electrical system, or do we have a more of an old world electrical HVAC system? I mean, the Iowa State Capitol has an old world HVAC system. You go in there and it's 72 degrees without fail. And all that space too, so. Jackie, I want to go in and sing Bohemian Rhapsody at the top of my lungs. It'd be interesting what kind of sounds you'd get, huh, Jackie? Oh, there you go, RB. You just had to say that. Well, you just outed me. It's not the logo. And here's an older image, but even in this, you can still see a lot of the ornate detailing within it. And I thought we'd just take a look at one of the chandeliers a little more close up. So yeah, I mean, is it all real gold? It might be, for all I know. And once again, these symbols up here. Lots of crosses, crosses within diamonds, multiple circles. Now, no, I'm not stating the meanings of the symbols. You're welcome to interpret it yourself and share in the comments. That's not how I operate. Now, some people say, why don't you operate that way? Because that's not how I operate. I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm just here to give you a presentation and give you some impressions on it. It's an exploration. Oh, that's an interesting feeling there, Vaughn. Yeah, a Persian feel when you look at these. At least what we'd expect to be a Persian feel, right? No doubt about it. KC933, yeah, we're definitely in the material world when we see something like this, aren't we? Ooh, that's an interesting perspective there, Cindy. Yeah, the two-headed eagle means European and Asian. Or Eurasian, as we said earlier. Is it possible that there really was something much more profound here than we realize? Only something to consider. And so that completes our look at the Kremlin. Now, yes, I'm well aware there's a lot of details we could go into in the Kremlin, and if you're interested in it, you can certainly go back and watch the exploration where we looked at many of the towers and the cathedrals. But I just wanted to look at some of the most striking features because I thought it was a great way to start the exploration. And so we're going to transition over to St. Basil's Cathedral here. We'll stop sharing and get the images from St. Basil's Cathedral up. And of course, we've shared many images of this, and it has quite a striking impression to it. Now, St. Basil's Cathedral. Officially, this was constructed 1555 to 1561 under the orders of Ivan the Terrible. For some reason, he wasn't called Ivan the Great. I can't imagine why. Yeah, gold is always so mesmerizing, isn't it? And so this cathedral that was built to officially commemorate a few conflicts that were going on. And here you can see many different variations in the color. And that's probably one of the most striking features of St. Basil's Cathedral. Hey, look at this. It almost looks like they got the glaive there if it was only 5, but that's 6 stars. So, Okay, yeah, I know. I need to stop watching the movie. It's okay. So very, very striking features. What the heck? What is going on here? We've got a bunch of American soldiers out in front of St. Basil's Cathedral. Well, I thought I'd include this because this is from 14 years ago, the Victory Parade, the Victory in Europe Parade that's celebrated in Moscow. And this was a time when the United States Army got to be present at this particular parade. These are soldiers from the 18th Infantry Regiment, the Vanguards, and they actually marched into the Kremlin. Yeah, who'd have thought we'd see the day where American soldiers would march into the Kremlin? This was only 14 years ago, so I guess this just shows you how fast things go back and forth when it comes to politics. Little interesting note, though, is that you can see the way that the entire ground or the street or the road or whatever you want to call it is many different blocks. And then you can also get an idea for the coloring. Now, here's a question for you. Have there ever been Russian soldiers marching in Washington, D.C.? Or have there ever been Russian soldiers officially marching in the United States, for that matter? Hey, your words, Philippi. Your words, not mine. But it's funny that a lot of people, oh yeah, much better roads than we have. Yeah, well, just wait. Got a little bit of a joke with that. Oh, Albie, yeah, you're right. There was the police academy mission in Russia. Right before they turned that into a TV series after the sequel stopped yielding anything. Anyways, different image right here, and here you can see some of the other brilliance in terms of the coloring. And I think that's one of the finest features with St. Basil's is the fact that it always has that different coloring depending on whether it's the sun is fully visible, it's behind the clouds, or it's night, and depending on the artificial lighting. In my mind, one of the telltale signs of a bona fide old world structure. We apparently have these kind of plans for it, although frankly, anybody could actually stand by it and draw this. And, I'll give it credit. It is actually two perspective plans. It's not a single perspective, so it wasn't done by E. Townsend Mix, thank goodness. But we have the older photos, the black and white photos, and again, you can see that the coloring is missing, of course. But once again, it looks old. It looks dusty. It looks like it needed to be cleaned up. So again, what's the real story behind it? Was it really old, or was everything just dusty for various reasons? Well, yeah, of course, it's well documented that there was a lot of coal burning things in the early 1900s, late 1800s, and there was just random dust storms. Everything was just kind of dusty. Haven't you ever seen a Western? Yeah, I've had people say that to me in comments all the time. But you can still see the detailing behind the actual architecture itself. And so it seems to reason that the coloring is actually there, but we can't tell. Hey, Vaughn, thank you very much for that, and welcome to the new members. Hey, New West Reset, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Ah, Dwayne. Yeah, it does kind of look like a drawing, like every other black and white photo, doesn't it? Ah. Reno, don't be surprised if one day all those structures take off to the sky. I don't think that's too much of a leap after some of the things I've seen. Definitely makes me wonder. And here you have the real striking photo of it in the sky. I think we're going to go ahead and take our initial intermission here because we're going to shift gears here in a little bit. And I think this is a good image to let you look on, so I'll just zoom in a little bit more. And so we're going to go ahead and go on break, but before we do, please hit the like button and support the channel. Give everybody else a chance to log on. We're about to go into the even more interesting section that we really haven't explored yet before concerning Moscow and St. Basil's. And with that, we're going to go on intermission, and I'll put on the Monty Python music, and we'll be back in 2 minutes. Okay, we are back, and I'll give everybody a chance to get logged back on. Oh, and thank you for those gifts there. Both Jamie and Random FX. Boy, a lot of membership gifting going out. So, anyway, give everybody a chance to get logged back on or off your little break for St. Basil's Cathedral. Language of silence. Yeah, sometimes I wish I could just speak that, Sky Sage. It would be a lot simpler. You know, sometimes I don't always like running my gob either. So, Albie, oh yeah, Sean Connery did. Marcus Ramius, Captain of the Red October. Great film. Hunt for the Red October. And by far and away the best Jack Ryan film I think they ever had. All right, so we'll move on. Haven't really looked at many interiors of St. Basil's, and here again you can see some of the kind of detailing that we'd expect to see within a cathedral, although another mix of symbolism. You know, incredible paintings, incredible artistic renderings. And I will admit, for whatever reason, interiors of St. Basil's is not always easy to come by. Not exactly sure why that is. Sure there's a reason, but you can see some of the ornate detailing here with the doors. And again, this mix of symbols, and maybe this is telling some other story or some other account that we're not supposed to be privy to. Oh yeah, very much so. Everybody does Sean Connery. Yeah, well, you know, it's just kind of one of those things that you do, Inferno. Sometimes my Sean Connery's better than other times, so. Oh yeah. And I think it's definitely a structure that needs to be explored in person. Ah, yes, I remember this famous photo of President Reagan with Mikhail Gorbachev. I'm sure he's probably telling him, you know, Mikhail, I've got a brick making factory in St. Louis. And Mikhail says to President Reagan, well, Mr. President, I heard that your brick making factories were never documented in St. Louis, and our bricks here in the Soviet Union are superior. They probably are because, I mean, look, they're walking on them. But, anyways. All right, enough of the bad political humor. Now, oddly enough, documenting St. Basil's is not exactly the easiest thing to do in the world, but, you know, it's from the 1500s, so that might have something to do with it. But I'm always intrigued when you have these old drawings that were somehow done from an aerial perspective, not really sure. Maybe somebody was able to use their mind, or perhaps they used one of those balloons in the 1600s, because that's when this drawing was dated to. And even then, it becomes difficult to actually verify what the layout and the construction of the city and the Kremlin itself was. So, it's just another one of those things. Hey, New West Reset, appreciate it. And thank you for joining us. And looking forward to our upcoming joint exploration. It's top of my list for this week, let me tell you. My Richard, in Russia, car drives you. Yeah, not really sure. And not really sure what was going on with St. Basil's. Now, this is quite intriguing. And this is definitely something I'd love to see in person for myself. You know, who are these figures supposed to be representing? Someone will tell me it's just supposed to be representing the apostles, read the Bible. Maybe, maybe. But it's always interesting how many different variations of the primary religions that we have across the land. These are really interesting figures up here. You know, you'd say they're just angels, but, you know, is that what they're representing, or are they representing something else? Hey, at least they've got crosses here in this particular cathedral. You know, unlike a certain basilica we looked at last week, where there were no crosses. Well, actually, it wasn't the basilica, it was the audience hall. I crack myself up sometimes. RB, they're watching us, but they don't want to get too close. Don't blame them. Probably so. Christy, everything was built by Spetsnaz. I guess it just depends who you ask, doesn't it? The Russian Orthodox crosses are crazy looking. They've got a lot of dimensions to them, and some could even say that they represent a different dimension, if you follow me. But of course, it depends on which kind of cross you're looking at. And then you have other images such as this, again from the inside of St. Basil's Cathedral. And what exactly is this representing? For some reason, and maybe I'm completely off base here, and let me know if you think I am, but some of these artistic renderings are reminding me of some of the drawings that we see in the Voynich manuscript. And even many other medieval books. Now, of course, you could say, well, that makes sense, and it's well documented that people did that kind of artwork. But what's this really representing? Why exactly is this in a cathedral? Down here you can get an idea of some of the brick structure, if it is bricks, although what's the rest of it made out of? Limestone? Hard to say. Oh, thanks, RB. I appreciate that. And granted, it's just a feeling, so. Okay, I'm glad to see I'm not the only one who thought that. See, that's why these live streams are so beneficial, because we can get multiple perspectives. That's the whole point behind it. And I suspect it's the main reason why it's so threatening to certain individuals. Or maybe I should just say irritating to certain individuals. You have a Christmas list for your subs that we can peruse? What kind of Christmas list would you like? Topics, locations? You'll have to let me know. Live stream on the manuscript. I think I'm going to get around to that, May, but I'm going to have to find a way to do it a little bit more creatively, because if I'm not careful, you can get bogged down into the quagmire, and it does get to be a little talky. Not that I mind being a little talky, but it's definitely a challenging topic, but an interesting one. And then here in the interior, and you see more of this artwork that, again, gives me that feeling of Voynich manuscript. But yet, if you pay enough attention, you can see you've got the geometric precision. And again, arches, arches, arches. So what's really the story behind this structure? What's really the story behind its original construction, and what did it represent? I don't know. And honestly, I am not certain of the veracity of even the construction materials. And by that, I mean, what's really brick, what's really granite, or is it something else entirely? Because when you actually go and you explore these structures in person, you'll get a different impression. I think it's kind of silly when you knock on things. Yeah, maybe. But I'm getting an idea for how it is to interact with something. And yes, if you just knock on something, you can tell if it's a genuine material or if it's just some kind of cheap concrete facade they have over the top of it. And believe me, I've come across that many times. Which, by the way, will come up later in this particular exploration. Spirit. Form over function. Why did they have so much time to decorate? Great question. It was as though the concept of decorating was important in and of itself. No, would be. It looks like Bilbo Baggins' palace in Lord of the Rings. Yeah, it does kind of look like that, doesn't it? Yeah, Rivendell. Fancy wallpaper. Yeah, if that's all it were, right? And yet, other things to see within St. Basil's, other representations. Okay, Virgin Mary and the Savior here, I suppose. But many different symbols above them. And yeah, going back to that concept of the more elaborate cross. And yet, if you recall in some other explorations, that basilica that's in the middle of small town, isolated Iowa actually has a rather ornate cross on it. A three-dimensional cross, if you will. Or what represents a tesseract, a four-dimensional existence. Maybe just a coincidence, I don't know. I mean, what is all this representing? Every image you look at from the interior, though, of St. Basil's just creates more questions. I mean, look at this right here. So definitely something I would like to explore in person. Okay, maybe I'm going to have to see if I can get that group together and go take a look. What do you think? Wouldn't that be something? Some of these artistic works seem very childish in skill level. It is a contrast, isn't it? They do. There is a bit of a contrast between what's more ornate and what isn't. Hey, Kimasabi. Well, then hit Dyersville. And I think you know the basilica I'm talking about. Dyersville, Iowa. Quite a beauty there. And yes, they do have that tesseract cross on top of that basilica still. And then just paying attention to the exterior. I mean, we notice a difference between the bricks here. Is this the same structure? Is this a different structure? Bricks are different, but then here, these bricks look almost pristine. And what the heck is this constructed out of? You know, is it a legitimate material or is it a material that replaced it later? Yeah, I'm willing to consider it. You know, not every old world structure reached us completely intact and authentic. But oddly enough, you don't have images of them constantly doing renovations on this cathedral, unlike some other structures we explore a lot of. So it's really hard to say. Yeah, exactly, Christy. Real or facade, and that's what I'm trying to figure out. Anyways, and then another look at this altar a little bit closer. Scale's a little bit hard to ascertain on this. But I'm thinking about the recent explorations we did looking at some of the cathedrals in Italy and then some of the artifacts that they had in those cathedrals. And, you know, they're still venerated to this day, but oddly enough, I'm always amazed at the, how shall we say, variety of different types of church artifacts or religious artifacts, however you want to say it, that we have. So much variety for things that are so venerated. Anyways, so that's St. Basil's. And we'll go to Moscow proper. Open things up here a little bit. And we're going to take a look at some of the metro stations in Moscow because they tend to get overlooked. Now, these are all different stations that are part of the Moscow metro system. So this is where you go. And, you know, for those of you who aren't familiar with the change in terminology, just think something similar to subway or transit system, if you will. This is the Moscow metro. Thoughts on this particular station? Wouldn't this be a cool place to wait for your train, huh? Oh, yeah. Very much old world. I agree, Mimi. That's the thing that really gets me too, Kathy, is just how clean they are. How new they look. Oh, don't worry. There's plenty more. We're just looking at one right now. Here's another one. Now, maybe you could say that this has a little bit more of a perhaps modern inclination in it, but does it? Or is it old world? Or is it old world looking advanced and futuristic? It's hard to say. Definitely one I'd like to explore in person. I mean, why exactly do you need something like this for a metro station? I know. The official explanation is we were showing the grand glory of the Communist Party system. I got it. You know, they say the same thing when they talk about Union Station in Kansas City. We were showing the grand glory of the United States in the early 1900s, and we needed to have a really tall ceiling. Now, granted, we don't have a tall ceiling, but we've got a very ornate floor and very interesting system. And what's on these reliefs? Not really sure. Here's another one. And so here at this metro station, you're getting more of the palace look. So much more old world. Now, is it possible that these aren't authentic and these are just facades? Yes, I have not been to these stations. I can't verify the quality or the authenticity of these construction materials. But just in looks alone, even if they are facades, credit needs to be given to whoever constructed these, if that's really what happened. But I suspect there's a much more complex story behind it. Yeah, you just can't get enough opulence, apparently. No expense spared, but, you know, if you watch the miniseries Chernobyl, they give you a very different impression of that particular government, don't they? So, really hard to say. I guess it's yet another example of a conflicting account. Yeah, exactly, Dr. Bass. It is very extravagant for a station. Yeah, this one is very curvy. Let's take a look at a few more, because believe me, I've got plenty more. What do you think of this one? This is where we have the very ornate columns. And what exactly is on these? Now, how I became aware of these metro stations, I had no awareness of this until I watched that film back in the USSR. And you actually see some of the details in that film of some of these structures. And it's very impressive. Now, yeah, you could just watch the movie and maybe that's why they kind of, I'll just say I think they nosedived the plot intentionally. But there are a lot of cool visuals in there. This symbol looks a little familiar, doesn't it? Again, not jumping to any conclusions. TARDIS. Yeah, why not? Jump into one of those columns and it's a TARDIS. Maybe Dallas, or maybe something else. Jamie looks like something from a Star Wars scene. Yes. Hard to say, isn't it? This is a really intriguing one, and this is one that gives me the impression that there is authenticity to the construction in these. But again, I could be wrong. I haven't been there. So I'm not going to give a more updated impression unless I've been there. But again, just looking at all these metro stations, and then even the exteriors and the ones that are standing, you still get that impression of classic old world architecture. So again, very difficult to say. I mean, look at this one. And here you have those designs and impressions within the ceiling that we know to see and look for in bona fide, legitimate old world architecture. So what's really going on with Moscow? Well, it's hard to say. Very much a blending of the old world and the new world, like all the other cities, but it seems as though for whatever reason Moscow's managed to retain a little bit more actual old world structure. Yeah, exactly, Sky Sage. Great word. Fantastical. That's exactly how I describe it. And that's the feeling I get, CFH90, is that we're looking at legitimate architecture here. Now, how old is it? You know, why was it dirty in those images? We don't know for sure. Oh, here's something that really looks like it's out there. Very science fiction impression to this. Yeah, and going back to that earlier comment, I think it was Jamie, yeah, if you're doing the Star Wars scene, you could just see the whole procession walking right down the hall here. Kind of surprised that more people haven't filmed in Moscow. Oh, no, wait a minute, it's Hollywood. No, I'm not surprised after all, but, you know. But very impressive interior to all these stations. Yeah, I mean, I could see enjoying waiting there for the train. Ah, yes, we had to have one checkerboard floor at least. Look at the coloring in these. And so you just ask the question, why would anybody go to the trouble to make these metro stations this elaborate, this decorative, at least with the current account of history that we have? Or the Soviet Union did this? Russia did this? Modern Russia, I mean? Oh, maybe. Just seems like a lot. Look, you can even see the geometric precision here going down from the lights. Color scheme is amazing too, how much it varies. Ah, no one is in there, Sky Sage. Yeah, very true. Made for 20-foot tall people. Or a crew of 1,000, 10,000 feet tall. Anybody knows what film that's from, I'll be impressed. Give you a hint, it was Dr. McCoy. Yeah, it may be a newer floor. And like I said, maybe they replace some elements to it, so. RB, cracking me up as always again. And even in this one, which almost appears as though it would be more functional, you still get this impression. I mean, look at these. So not a single one of these stations that's not adorned with decorations and artistic decorations and detailing. And so again, this has that appearance of those older structures that we expect to see from what we think of as the 1800s. But again, who knows what the real account is? It's almost as though, for whatever reason, more advanced examples of the previous civilization seem to have survived in concentrated areas, depending on the geographical location. Now, there could be many different reasons for that. But maybe there's a reason why we've always had this divide, and that's why I started the exploration with the question, is this part of Russia, is Moscow in Europe or Asia? Well, that's always the thing. Well, it's in Eurasia, sure. Officially, it's in Europe, but yeah, a lot of people think it's actually part of Asia. So just interesting to consider those perceptions. Sovereign, invisible, and traceable. They've added to the border of the old new world by building the new military cathedral. Why? Oh, don't worry, we'll be getting to that, and I think you already know the answer why. Yeah, of course we're going to take a look at that. So anyways, and on that note, before we move on the note of blurring, we'll look at our first blurry structure here. The main building of Moscow State University. And I'm sure you've seen this before. And this was constructed in the late 1940s, early 1950s, during the Stalinist era of the Soviet Union. Now, this is one of those big question marks. And there are a lot of people that say, and I'm sure you've seen the diagram, no, I'm not going to show it in this exploration, that this building goes much further underground. Who knows? Elements of it must. It must have one heck of a foundation, whether it was built as we're informed in the 1940s, 1950s by Stalinist Soviet Union, or maybe there's another account to it. Hard to say. I haven't been there. I could see it going both ways, but there's many structures in what we think of as the former Eastern Bloc, or on the east side of the former so-called Iron Curtain, that have a bit of a story behind this to them. And they seem a little bit more ornate and elaborate. It's almost as though the Art Deco era, if you will, of what was on the east side of the Iron Curtain had a few more decades behind it. Or maybe they did build the buildings. I don't know. I will tell you all this. No one, in all the explorations I've done, has ever made the one comment that would convince me that our civilization built these structures. I know you're going to ask, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. It's also something I've never heard since I've been aware that I've been here. Now, yes, this could have been built by the Stalin regime. Sure. And there are accounts of people laboring hard, and you do have the right figures, but again, I have to wonder, is there more behind it? But then we have these interesting figures, so it's hard to say. Could be modified. But of course, when you go higher up the structure, much like when you go higher up Liberty Tower in Kansas City, you see things that don't tend to reflect what you'd expect to see with the symbolism aside from this. And, one way or the other, it looks like it was tacked on as an afterthought. Again, that's just my impression. I could be wrong. But you look at some of the detailing on it, and it's just really hard to say. New West Reset. Oh, yeah, well, 4 years. At least they're not saying they did it in a year, right? It was to show the superiority of the Soviet Union. That's what this building did. Just go with that. Yeah, it is kind of an Art Deco layout. But so, on this one, I have to go there and see it. I don't know. Moscow State University, main building. All right. We're going to transition to the Urals now. But don't worry, I've got a little bit of a bonus, so we're not done looking at structures. So, the Urals. And you may not be familiar with the Urals, and that's okay if you're not. And so for geographical positioning, and this is a nice little map that kind of shows it real easily, and let me make sure you can see this. So over here you have Russia, that's in Europe, Moscow, to the west of the Ural Mountains, and then the Ural Mountains, the official divide line between Asia and Europe. Though funny how the Ural Mountains kind of peter out down here in Kazakhstan, huh? Right before you get to the Caspian Sea. But interesting. And the Ural Mountains do seem to be a divide line between many things. What always interested me, though, about the official historical account of Russia, and this is from my teaching days, are all the accounts of the Russian expeditions that came from Europe, Russia, into Asia, Russia, into what is today Siberia, when they explored Siberia. Of course, remember, we've got maps there that say the name Tartaria, although the official historical designation tells us there was no such place as Tartaria. It was Greater Tartary. Make of it what you will, the maps say many different things. But the Ural Mountains have many different mysteries to them. Many mysteries. We're going to look at some of them. And I think that's why it really stands out to us. And here you can kind of see this dividing region here in what is today Russia. And here we have an early map from the 1500s from a member of the Holy Roman Empire. Yes, they were still around. And quite an interesting map that details the area in the Urals at that time, actually showing the mountains and one of the main cities and forts that are actually between there. Now, who really knows how accurate this map is? I only included this because you look at the Urals and you can get an idea for just how impressively beautiful the area is. You know, it's your classic mountainous region. But when you look a little more closely at some of the landscapes, it definitely causes the mind to wonder in different ways. Isabella, a thing they don't forget was their cackling out star forts. Oh, yeah, well, who knows exactly what they had there? Who knows? Oh, Chassis, there are plenty of mountains for you to climb in the Urals, let me tell you. Well, Sky Sage, I guess it does kind of have that appearance. Or maybe we should call it a mound, right? Yeah, and I don't wonder about a lot of this, you know, what it is. And maybe. There seems to be a reason why this area to this day still seems to be relatively, how shall we say, off limits. I mean, it's not officially off limits, but it's not exactly easy to access, and it's certainly not easy to talk about. And that's something that comes up a lot. But if you explore some of the landscape in the Urals, you'll see this. You'll see these interesting rock formations that, okay, they might just be rocks, but there's too many occasions, I think, of these rocks that seem to be forming rather odd shapes, odd patterns. I mean, what are these rocks really? Well, maybe they're just rocks. Sure. Okay. Oh, I thought this was funny. This is Sigismund von Hibberstein. He's the individual from the Holy Roman Empire who actually drew the map. Quite an interesting outfit that he's wearing. For some reason, I'm not wondering if he's got a bunch of people hidden underneath this robe here. A very unique drawing. Call it what you will. Now, this is one of the villages or towns that we have that's basically located right smack dab in the middle of the Urals. 1900s, 1910 image. And, of course, we can see some of the, how shall we say, more modern structures. But then we have some of the very illustrious cathedrals and towers that are right next to them. So again, sharing that story, replicating that story that we have all across the land. And here's this town from a modern image, and you can see how incredibly ornate and beautiful this cathedral looks today in a color photo. Oh yeah, elaborate robe coat. Yeah, definitely fit a lot of people under there. May, he ain't human. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting to include. A giant with small hands. Yeah, maybe. Hey, good to see you, the Banff local. Thanks for joining us. How many crosses does one building need, Kathy? I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I don't think it's got enough. Needs about 100 more. But you go a little ways east. Now, to be fair, this isn't exactly in the Urals, but this is just entering Siberia, and we've talked about this before. You again come across these, what they call megalithic rock structures that are in Siberia. There's a few that are documented. There's many that are undocumented. So for whatever reason, Siberia seems to be the no-go, don't talk about it land. Again, not sure why. And then back within the Urals, you have this particular cave complex here. And I'm going to butcher the pronunciation on this. I think this is called Ignateva Cave. I'm probably not pronouncing that remotely correct. But on the inside of it, they inform us that this artwork is an early drawing of a man. I mean, I guess, you know, if a man were red and had horns, I don't know, kind of looks more like Darkness portrayed by Tim Curry in Ridley Scott's film The Legend, but, you know, maybe just say it's a mischievous spirit. I don't know. So an old cave, very interesting drawing. And then other unique rock formations the more you look across the Urals. All right, and I'm definitely going to butcher this pronunciation. The Manapoiper, I think that's how you pronounce it, rock formation. And again, this is on the north side of the Urals, so the northern portion. Just these very, very large and tall rock columns that are just sitting out there in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, nothing to see here, right? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, all kinds of theories for this in terms of what these are. Yeah, that one crossed my mind too with Lot's wife. Electrified giants of old turned to stone. Yeah, or maybe that's where the story in The Hobbit and subsequent Lord of the Rings came from, right? So who knows? But yeah, very interesting rock formations. And here you can get an idea for how tall these are. You got a couple individuals looking up at one of them. So yeah, not sure what to make of it at all. Just rocks out there in the middle of nowhere, no other rocks around it. But, don't ask any questions. It's a natural formation. 200 million years ago, forces of nature caused it to happen. Sure, maybe. Or maybe there's a completely different explanation behind it. But what amazes me is you can get an idea for what's really holding these things up. What kind of strength do they have structurally to maintain their structural integrity? Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's structures, if it's a remaining organic life form. I mean, who's to know, who's to say? I mean, you can go either way on it. So again, just another mystery. And yet, when you look closely with some other images, you can kind of see that you do have what appears to be some block cuts. Of course, you'll be told, those are just lines that were caused by the water. Okay, yeah, sure, because everything was underwater at some point in the past. We never saw it, but we'll tell you. Obviously, these things weren't flattened by a glacier, like we'd say in the United States, but only the glaciers in the United States have special powers. They can randomly cut lakes for no reason, but then not leave lakes in other areas. The magical glaciers. Ugh. Anyways, to reach this particular rock formation, you have to go through this area called Dyatlov Pass. Ah, yes, we are going to talk about Dyatlov Pass, or Dyatlov Pass. There's many different ways to pronounce the name. Yeah, for whatever reason, that name comes up a lot whenever something terrible seems to happen. I'm not sure why. It's kind of like how in the United States the name Bundy seems to come up a lot when something terrible happens. I don't know, maybe it's just a coincidence. And so, what's the account behind the Dyatlov Pass? Well, I'll just summarize it for those of you who aren't familiar. The Dyatlov Pass incident, death of the Dyatlov hiking group, an event which 9 Soviet hikers died in the northern Ural Mountains between February 1st and 2nd, 1959. Under uncertain circumstances, the experienced trekking group from Ural Polytechnical Institute, led by Igor Dyatlov, had established a camp on the eastern slopes of what's called Dead Mountain. Yeah, nice name there. Overnight, something caused them to cut their way out of their tent and flee the campsite while inadequately dressed for heavy snowfall and sub-zero temperatures. Their bodies were discovered, and of the 9 of them, it was determined that 6 had died from hypothermia, while 3 had been killed by extreme physical trauma. In fact, 2 of them had had their chests crushed. And you can imagine what kind of force it takes to crush a chest. And this shows you exactly the location where it transpired. And in this little diagram here, you can see the tent that, according to forensics, these hikers cut their way out, and then where each of them unfortunately passed away. Now, there's been all kinds of speculation. There's all kinds of theories. There is no official account for why behind this. There's many theories that suggest an avalanche. There's other theories that suggest something else happened. I'm rather curious, though, that if the official account says that there was extreme physical forces and somebody's chest was crushed and somebody's skull was crushed, well, that tends to take a lot of force. So what was really going on there? Yeah, you're right, Spirit. There were accounts of radiation burns. There was a subsequent account of somebody observing them and saw that the bodies looked tan before they were being buried. There was another hiking group that reported seeing orange lights in the sky. Now, who knows exactly what's going on there, but officially, yeah, there's a lot of morbidity to it. Now, I'm certainly not going to show any of those images because we know what would happen to this live stream, but you're welcome to look it up and experience it on your own if you're so inclined. Lady Deanne, my theory on Bigfoot and Yeti is they are human giants in hiding. That could be. Maybe that's what they encountered here. Who knows? Well, this is well after the Tunguska event, but maybe something else that's similar to it. Yeah, you're right, RB. It definitely has a lot of morbidity to it. So no one's really sure what actually happened here. And to this day, there's no conclusions. Although it's interesting that certain people, our favorite skeptoids, say we shouldn't be talking about this. So naturally, I'm talking about it. I just thought it was interesting to explore. But not really sure what to make of it. Are there other forces responsible? There are some accounts that the Urals contain portals. There's some accounts that there are overlapping realities in the Urals. And of course, there's the legend of the rock formations that we looked at, that there was an original group of people, whether you want to call them natives or aboriginals or a tribe, that venerated those rock formations and said you shouldn't climb them. Maybe there's a reason behind that. Who knows? This is the memorial to the unfortunate individuals that passed away in the Dyatlov Pass incident. There's several other pass incidences that have been attributed to extreme factors across the former Soviet Union and now Russia. But this is the one that lingers with us for whatever reason because of the mystery behind it. And who knows what they really encountered up there. It seems that if we go off of critical thinking, that something caused them to want to get out of their tent rather quickly. So whether you want to say it was an avalanche or something else, it's just how exactly to have an avalanche. And, typically the drill, if you have an avalanche, is you go up into a ball and you get ready to dig your way out. Or you're stuck there. Obviously, they didn't find them buried under snow. They found them exposed. But again, who even knows what the official count and what kind of forensics were actually done? I always question that whenever we have those explanations. Jassy, sounds like they came up on something they weren't supposed to. I think that's something we could probably conclude on that, one way or the other. KC933, scientists got together with Disney to recreate what happened. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised they didn't. So, anyway, Dyatlov Pass, it remains a mystery. I was going to do an exploration on it, but I had a feeling I'd encounter some difficulties, so I just thought we'd talk about it in a live stream briefly. But if you're interested in having me look more into it, just let me know. All right, for the last part of our exploration, we're going to look into the account of Prokudin-Gorsky. This is an individual who was a Russian chemist and a photographer, and he was active during the Imperial Russian era from circa 1909 to 1915. Now we have this nice black and white photo of him, but this individual was famous for being able to take colorized photos in the very early 1900s. Now, the reason I brought this up was there was somebody who commented, I think it was on last week's live stream, or it was one of the other explorations, about how difficult it is to colorize photos. But apparently, old Mr. Gorsky here, he figured out the technique behind it. And indeed, this is attributed to being a photo from 1910 that's colorized. Nice quarry or whatever they're in. But what are your thoughts on this? Yeah, I know, and it's just another one of those things where we're seeing all these images that are colorized. Yeah, and you got the weird hands. Kind of like all the Civil War images we have that are colorized. Now, before we jump to conclusions on this, we have to be careful because, remember, images can be manipulated, and it's something we have to keep in mind. And there's another detail about these images. We'll get to it in a second. But the official account says that Mr. Gorsky traveled Imperial Russia, and he took many of these incredible colorized photos. And here you can even see what he called the triple composite. I think that was the name for the process, where he would composite together the colors. And again, here we have another image from the very early 1900s. Yet you could almost say it looks quite modern in many ways. So it's hard to say what's really going on here. Oh, it was called the composite three-color principle. So in this image, you can see how he would composite the color together. Now, by definition, is that image manipulation? I don't know. Because it's saying that he composited images and colors together. Or is that how they originally did color images? So it causes you to step back and question, because do we have image manipulation? Yeah, I'm with you, Lady Deanne. There is something very striking about them. Yeah, plausibly deniable. You're right, Vaughn. And so it's really, really hard to say. Are they legitimate images or are they manipulated images? I had somebody ask me in the comments, well, why don't you modify images? And I said, one thing I will never do on the channel, I will never personally modify an image. If that means I'm putting up a poor quality image, so be it. I would rather retain the credibility than manipulate images just to have a better presentation. I'm not going to do that. If the image is manipulated, it's because somebody else did it. But it's really hard to say. And I mean, Mr. Gorsky here provided some really incredible images. This is from the early 1900s, and it's a colorized image. Now, could this be giving us a clue? Or is this just trying to deceive us? That's why we have to be very careful. We don't know. Because as I said, there's a little bit more to this account. So the official account on Mr. Gorsky is that he lived from 1863 to 1944. And while he was in the Russian Empire, he passed away in Paris, France. Well, somehow, some way, all these negatives he took were acquired. And guess who they were acquired by? No, not the government of France. No, not anybody in Europe. But by the United States Library of Congress. Yes, the official account says that somehow a very famous Russian photographer and chemist's photos, all the negatives, were acquired by the United States Library of Congress. And that's where these images were. So keep all that in mind. Yeah, exactly. No blue sky. Interesting. It doesn't have a lot of artifacts like black and white photos have. The lines and the dust. Very good point there. Great observation there, Lady Deanne. Ooh, look at that, Jay. A Potemkin village. Ah, yes, and we know the story behind that, don't we? So it's interesting to consider it, but it's something we have to keep in mind. What's that tall structure way in the background? Do you think we should zoom in on that? Maybe we should just take a little look. A little look. Yeah, what the heck is that? Skyscraper in the early 1900s? Random isolated skyscraper? I do not know. Or could it have been something from the coloring process? Interesting how you see this individual in what looks to be a modern blue raincoat. So yeah, I really don't know. Here we have Leo Tolstoy. You might remember he wrote a certain gigantic novel that Charlie Brown had a lot of trouble reading. Again, he's wearing blue. What's with everybody wearing blue? Maybe it's gray. I'm seeing things. He's got a nice beard, though. And here from the town of Herm, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Hey, look, there's that symbol again. Nice checkerboard there on the dome. And again, more ornate detail. Oh, and of course they had full power and everything in the early 1900s. I mean, maybe. Well, it's almost like everybody got power at the exact same time. See, it was just a myth. Imperial Russia wasn't behind anybody. The Tsar had brought them in the 20th century very quickly. I'm kidding, of course, but yeah, it's that symbol from that group that Boomer Senior told us about earlier, isn't it? Yeah, it just keeps coming up. Oh yeah, well, you get a lot of checkerboard on this channel. Life seemed much more idyllic. Maybe it was. But maybe from when this image was taken, it wasn't. Maybe there was a time before this image it was a little different. Who knows? Now, this one is very striking. So this is attributed to 1911. I mean, this almost looks like it was taken with a modern camera. No coloring on the structure behind them. I mean, that actually looks like Abraham Lincoln's house, at least the one we're told that he was born in or grew up in. So I don't know. But then look at these incredible colors that these three girls are in. Quite impressive. And then here you have this other one. Again, showing yet another of these many opulent cathedrals. Although, is this really a cathedral or are we missing the crosses? I guess we see the crosses. Many spires, because, you need to have spires and domes. Where would you be without them? And keep in mind, these images are all from the Urals. So we're kind of isolated here. So it's almost as unique as seeing one of those giant basilicas in the middle of Dyersville, Iowa, only this is in the middle of small town Urals, Russia. So I don't know. I really don't know. Do have some clouds here, no vanilla sky, so give them credit for that. Yeah, maybe. Hey, thank you for that Gen X of the 7th power. I'll make sure I get that one up there. I appreciate that. Gen X to the 7th power. Yeah, we do have quite a few Gen Xers, don't we? Is it really in a Gen Xer? Maybe just an honorary one. I crack myself up. Well, I mean, maybe. Zeppelins or free power, all kinds of possibilities for uses on those. Oh, good observation there, Susie. Bridge doesn't match the building. No, it really doesn't, does it? Almost looks like a thrown-up pontoon bridge, doesn't it? Like maybe something had happened to the bridge, and they had to throw up this temporary pontoon bridge to access this building. Good call out there. Yeah, I know. I do know how to tweak Gen Xers, you know. Just call you out and boom, you all start stepping forward. Oh, yeah. Does look elvish, doesn't it? I'm sure there's some sort of star fort involved there, Vaughn. Aga, the Petersburg, Iowa church is even more wild. Yes, it is, and Petersburg is not even a town. It's not even an incorporated town. Oh, and it's even funnier. It's less than 10 miles away from that mighty basilica in Dyersville, so why'd they need to build a church like that in Petersburg? Oh, and it also happened during a time when the Catholic Church had no money and the papal lands were being snagged by the Kingdom of Italy. But hey, they still pulled it off. So, like I said, make of it as you will. This is probably one of the most intriguing ones. Because here you kind of see this mix of structures here. Now, this bridge looks a little bit more like what we'd expect. This isn't a cheap pontoon bridge, is it? I mean, is that really a dirt road or is there something more under it? I mean, why do you build a bridge like this for just a dirt road? And you can see in the variety of the structures here, because you look at this one almost looks a little bit more advanced and modern. Odd. And then, of course, you go up here and you have the mighty cathedral with the dome and the spires. And you might remember that isolated, beautiful church that we looked at in what is today Ukraine. But it sort of reminds me of that. You got some other ones over here. So, I mean, what's really going on with these images? And yet here, this looks more like your, I don't want to say temporary housing, but more of your hastily constructed housing. So kind of different images and different impressions that we get from the image. Maybe. Power plant. Yeah, that could be. May. Yeah, I'm under that impression as well. Clearly something rolled through here and destroyed a lot of the structures. Oh, maybe. You find it interesting they're doing the BRICS meeting in Kazan, the supposed capital of Tartaria. It is interesting. It is very interesting. Although who knows if that was really the capital. Was it a regional capital? Who knows? I had a dream of the similar landscape when I was a child. It is a unique landscape, isn't it, RB? And not really something you get many images of. So did something come through here and completely wash this out with mud and dirt and debris? That's why the road's covered with dirt and debris. That's why you just have the bridge protruding here. It's why you have these hastily constructed structures around what appears to be these more modern, or I don't want to say more modern, but more lasting constructed structures with greater foundations. Surviving buildings from a glory lost long ago. Seeing it very directly. Or it's a manipulated image and there's no veracity to it. Kind of interesting looking close up here. Now this is one that I really wanted to include because here you can see kind of the same phenomenon, although it looks like they're a little further along. And this is from 1910. Now let me ask you, Does this photo look like it's really from 1910? Or does this almost look like something we'd expect to see from late 1960s, early 1970s United States? It's probably one of the most interesting ones right here. Yeah, exactly. And here we are seeing it in the middle of the Urals, in the middle of Russia. No, it doesn't. Mm-mm-mm. Oh, there you go. 1965. Yeah, it does look like a 1965 image, doesn't it? No people. Nah, who needs people? Let's take a close look. What do we got here? So we've got several very well adorned and decorated towers. I mean, look at this old world structure right here. Wow. I mean, that could be any one of those old high schools that you see across the United States right here. This is Perm again. I'm probably mispronouncing it, but all good. I mean, look at this one. This one's got two domes on it. And again, you can see another one of these more advanced structures. Here you've got what looks to be like the little triangular pediment. And then here we have the arch pediment over it. I mean, we can still see a lot. Kind of wonder if it would be possible to see the original image of this that was black and white. But I mean, it's crazy. I mean, here in the distance, another what looks to be what we'd consider a cathedral, but who knows for sure. And then the real question, is this a paved street right here? And if you look really closely, you get the impression that there's actual sidewalks here. I mean, maybe I'm just seeing things, but... So what exactly happened here? And then even over here, we have some more of these, what looks to be permanent lasting buildings that have been there for a while. Larger structure over here, probably another what will be told is a cathedral. I mean, what the heck is this? Another cathedral? Just cathedrals all over the place, because you can't have enough of them. You got a smokestack here. And then what's this? I mean, it's really hard to tell. So many hints, though, in this particular image. So much analysis you can do on it. And this is a colorized image from Mr. Gorsky that was found in negatives in Paris after he died and somehow ended up in the United States Library of Congress. So could this just simply be trying to obfuscate the account? Is this just simply trying to tell us, look, here's some evidence, accept it? Maybe. Or maybe it is legitimate clues that no one's really screened yet. I don't know. But there's too many clues to ignore that there seems to be something a lot more insidious going on with this entire account. And as you've observed, there are no people here. RB, that's probably the best explanation right there. The Matrix is still rendering. Yep, and the people weren't plugged in yet. I think you happened upon it right there. Hey, Ash, thanks for joining us. Yeah, watercolor on a slide, I wonder. Yeah, there you go, my bailiwick zone. Urban looking with no peeps around. So true. Nathan, first time reacting, long time watcher. So everything inside me on YouTube has very interesting videos about old world buildings and old postcards and maps and Americas. Yes, 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 yes. Interesting first time comment too. Thank you for commenting. It's a painting, says Vaughn. Oh, there you go, Sky Sage. See with your mind, not with your eyes. Very sage advice there, Sky Sage. Very sage advice. I knew one of these days I was going to be able to get you with one. But you're absolutely right. You do need to see with your mind and not with your eyes on this. Because, as is said, your eyes might be showing you what you want to know. Well, maybe we could just say that picture manipulation or picture construction is a lot older than we like to know. Was ultra laser beamed, yeah. Young Skywalker. Yeah, that's right. Good advice from Obi-Wan there. So it's really hard to say. And what ended up happening to Gorsky? I mean, was he a real individual? Or were these images just something, like I said, that were shown to us to keep us off the beaten path? I don't know. The thing about it is this evidence is not all-encompassing in these images. These are just clues, even if we take these pictures at face value. And so I'm inclined to think that we do have some clues that seem to be hidden within these. And what became of Mr. Gorsky? Was he someone who was trying to disclose an actual record of what really happened, and he paid the ultimate price for it? Who knows for sure? Ah, when you see it's opening your third eye. And there, Sky Sage, you come across the true intention behind a lot of these explorations. Hey, Clara. Apparently it was only completed a few years ago, and yet old buses were used for a long time. Yeah, funny that, huh? It's kind of the same story that we have with the trolleys, too. They were always going, even in small town USA. Nobody was out and about, Nora. I guess that's just the explanation we have to go with. So anyway, hey, Sooner West, thank you. Appreciate it. Well, it sounds like another couple waypoints have been added once we get that airship going, doesn't it? I think we're going to have to make some pit stops across Russia. Don't worry, we'll call ahead and clear the airspace, okay? No problem. We'll just tell them we're coming to do old world exploration. I'm sure they'll be totally all right with it. I mean, hey, they let the 18th Infantry Regiment march into the Kremlin. I think they're a lot more welcoming than, say, some nations are of other people coming in, right? Sorry, I just had a joke about that. All right. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed tonight's exploration. Now, that's all we have. But I wanted to take a closer look and really contrast what we have in Moscow with some of the mysteries that we have and what we think of as the rural areas of Russia. So it's not just a pattern that you see in the United States or South America or anywhere else we've looked at. You do see it very clearly in Russia. And I'm not discounting that there may be, for whatever reason, some more direct connections in that particular geographical area. So anyway, before you depart, please hit the like button and support the channel. And I enjoy all these live stream explorations, but for whatever reason, I think we've gotten some great comments and feedback on the last two. And like I always say, why am I all about talking to people? Because I learn the most when I talk to people. That's the point behind the live stream explorations. Now, you're more than welcome to give your feedback. If you don't care for live stream explorations, that's okay. But I always appreciate everybody showing up. Thanks, I am Kairos. Hey, I am Kairos, real quick. I had a unique incident that occurred with you. I've received emails from two separate accounts, both claiming to be you. Did you actually email me this last week or didn't you? Just let me know. Well, you know, Sooner West, I just indulge in word salad all the time. Word salad, image salad, mental salad, all kinds of salads, but you can eat whatever salad you want to here. Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. Then I think I know which one is the real you and which one isn't. So I'll get back to responding. Thanks for verifying that. All right. Well, I hope everybody has a wonderful week. Thanks for joining us. We'll have that special exploration coming out early this week. And we do have a guest explorer join us. So look out for that. And may get to one final exploration before the end of October. No. I don't do any of that, Dallas. That's all on you if you want to take what you want. So, all right. Well, that's all we have. I hope you enjoy your evening and weekend wherever you are on the land. This is Lucius Aurelian signing off. Thank you for joining us.